each one of you, and thank you to MPR for giving me this opportunity. Always a pleasure, and more so because I am among many friends with whom I've had the occasion of interacting even earlier. Preeti Salva is a prime example. Premal is an example, and there are many more of you whom I know already. So if I end up saying things which I have said earlier in the previous talks that you've heard, you've got to just forgive me. Now, before I begin, in today's talk, I'm going to center it around certain case studies. These case studies come mainly from the army, and some of them are about great leaders. Now, the question that should come from you is, so we are not in the army, and we are not Mahatma Gandhi or Nelson Mandela, so how about telling us something about ourselves? The fact is, all this is about you. Everybody starts out at some level before he becomes a leader of that kind. And surely I'll be talking about your particular organization and what you should be doing to become an intentional leader. And of course, we'll start with what an intentional leader really is. And of course, I'll request you, if you have any questions, we'll take them in the end. Now, if you look around, you would notice that whether it is in the field of politics, it's in the field of administrative services, it's in the field of the corporate, or any other organization, if there is one thing that we really miss is great leadership. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not as if the leadership doesn't exist. Sure, it does. But the fact is that while we have great workers, great managers, all of whom play an extremely important part, somehow there is a deficiency of leadership. Now, I don't want to get political because definitely I have no such views. But if you just look around the entire landscape of the country and you start wondering how many great leaders we have, you will get the answer yourself, right? Now, the fact is that at that higher levels, or at any level, if you don't have leadership, it impacts not just that person himself, but it impacts all the people that work under that. And yet, there are many people who exhibit great leadership. I have been in a company where I remember there was the in charge of a pantry who had worked in that position for 10, 15 years, who had become an icon. I'm sure you would see such icons in your companies or in your organizations. People who exhibit leadership at the junior most level. All right. All these people are intentional leaders, and I'm going to give you some examples as we go along. You would similarly find leaders among basketball captains in the schools, school monitors, and so on and so forth. So first thing that I want you to remember is leadership is not a position. It is not a designation. We aren't talking about head of the army being the greatest leader. No, we are talking about each one of you being an intentional leader wherever you are. And therefore is this little quote that I called out. The unfortunate reality is that many suddenly find themselves in a leadership position when they least expect it. Many people don't expect it, but they become leaders. All right, let me start with something called the Peter Principle. Many of you would be familiar with what I'm talking about. The Peter Principle says that each person in a hierarchy rises to his or her level of incompetence. Now, this would sound odd. People should be rising to the level of competence, but that's not the case. You can take the example of any organization. Let's say you have a teacher who's outstandingly good at teaching kids, loving children. She's very affectionate. She's going to get promoted from junior teacher to a middle teacher to a senior teacher. But let us say she all her life has not picked up any administrative skills. So what happens? She's made principal one day, and that's a disaster. That's what I mean by people rising to the level of incompetence. So if you and I are not careful, if we think we are good where we are, then one day you'll be promoted and suddenly you'll find yourself that you've risen to a level of incompetence. Let's take the case of a company like yours or an organization like yours. Pardon my ignorance, so I've just given very broad names. So what happens when you're a junior person in a company like that? Of course, you are So long as you're good at understanding what is TDS, what is IDS, what is certification, you're able to review the numbers which are given to you, all the data, you're good at Excel sheets. So long as you are able to read queries and execute them, you're a good person. But let's say you're a person who hasn't developed the art of reading patterns into this data, of really finding out as to what is hidden behind these numbers. How can you help the client? What will happen? When you reach the next level, you would have risen to the level of incompetence. But let's say you are good and you reach the next level, you become a manager. You can read the benefits, you can read the patterns, you can find out what benefits you can give to the client. You know about the change in law and you can use it well. You are good at cross-department work, so you can deal with the audit chaps and come out with good conclusions. You can do all that. Okay, you're still good. But let's assume a manager like that lacks one skill, and it's called people skill. Now, sure, even managers have to have people skills, but let's say his people skill is not very strong. And the next thing he's made is a partner or a senior consultant, where he's supposed to look after the entire business. What do you think is going to happen? That is what rising to your level of competence or incompetence means. So how does it apply to us? It applies to us that if we do not worry about becoming leaders by intention, with clarity, we will become what is known as the accidental leader. I put up that icon on top. I haven't even given it a photograph. You can guess. There are many, many people in the world who have risen, but they have risen accidentally. History has thrown them up, or hierarchy has thrown them up. They've literally been kicked upstairs, and today they're out there doing damage. Now, what happens when you become an accidental leader, or when somebody becomes an accidental leader? First of all, the person is not prepared. And I'm going to show you in a minute what I mean by this. Secondly, the person doesn't see himself as a leader. You've seen many people who keep micromanaging, they still think they are junior managers. I've seen army officers who, as second lieutenants are very good because they are physically fit, they run around, they play hockey, they're excellent. And as they keep going up in life, they're still sticking to these good points. Whereas the requirement has shifted. The requirement is to command 1,000 people into battle. It's because they don't see themselves as leaders. They continue with old competencies. I will again talk about that in a bit because this is a serious matter. And naturally, as you rise, you have more people under you. So if you're not competent, if you're not an intentional leader, you're going to hurt the entire organization. So now the question arises, all this is very well, but what has it got to do with us? Why should you even think about intentional leader or otherwise? The first thing that everyone must realize is that what makes you successful at one level may not work when you go up as a leader. Let me give you an example. Somebody who's an excellent worker, outstanding to go into details, very loyal, hardworking, willing to stay up the night, gets promoted up the chain slowly till he becomes a vice president. And there's one thing he lacks is interpersonal skills. Once he becomes the CEO or he's made the CEO, he comes to believe that, well, I'm successful, am I not? I behaved in a certain way, so this should work even now. The fact is, it won't work then. And therefore, it is important for us to find out what is it that we lack today and what do we need to do to become an intentional leader later on. Secondly, quite obviously, it can't be learned suddenly, right? And it can lead into failure and disaster at a very major scale. Again, you look around yourself. What happens if you're a Donald Trump and you rise to one of the most powerful positions in the world? Position, but not leadership. The entire American preeminence goes down because you're not really ready to adopt real leadership to unite the fabric of the country and to think big. You continue to think petty like a small businessman, and there you are. It results in failure and disaster. I can argue that failures of Kingfisher or failures of Satyam's Raju possibly can be ascribed to this, that people lacked a certain quality in their makeup, which was fatal. All of us have shortcomings, but there were certain qualities which are really fatal. And you know that this will hurt many, many people around you. Now, on one side, I've put a couple of sports pictures. What are these pictures about? One is a picture of a legendary English all-rounder called Ian Botham. Sir Ian Botham is arguably the best ever all-rounder England has ever had. As a matter of fact, there was a time when he won the Ashes for England single-handedly. And newspapers used to read the score like Botham 3, Australia 2. He was that good. And then Botham was made the captain. He played 102 tests in his whole life, but when he was made a captain, he was going to be sacked after 12 tests. He'd lost 4 and drawn 8 and won 0. This startling example should tell you that just because something is working for you today, it's not necessary that it will work at the higher leadership levels. And then there is the god of cricket himself, Sachin Tendulkar. There is no man who is parallel to him in the history of cricket, including Don Bradman. And what is Sachin's record as a cricket captain? 25 tests, 4 wins. What is his record as the ODI captain? 73 ODIs as a captain, 23 wins. Now, I'm not saying this to run down Sachin or Ian Botham, obviously I can't, but I'm giving you startling examples. How even if you're brilliant at one level, you may not be that good. And the other guy in the picture is Mike Brearley, who really wasn't a brilliant guy in playing, but became England's successful captain ever. All right, so moving on. Therefore, let's check it out. I've mentioned this word so often, but what really is this thing called intentional leadership? It is deciding in advance in your mind that you're a leader and clearly knowing what your role is. This may sound like a very simple statement, but the fact of the matter is, what you decide in your mind is your role in life is what decides whether you're a winner or a loser. A father who thinks his main role is to work hard in the office, bring pay, give it to his wife, let her run the household, while every evening he sits down and watches television, is going to behave very differently from a father who believes his main role is going to the office and earning money, but his main role is to make sure the welfare of his family, the health of his wife, and the progress of his children. These are going to make 2 fundamental differences. You are what you imagine you are going to be. And you know what is the most important word there? I've underlined it. It's called role. And I'll explain to you now what I mean by that. And how, as an intentional leader, you must understand. So before we discuss what is your role, let's momentarily talk about what isn't your role, what is not to be confused with your role. Your designation is not a role. If I'm GOC Pune Sub-area, that's not my role, that's my designation. My rank as a Major General is not my role, that's just a rank. So many people become Major Generals, so many people become captains, so many are MDs, so many are partners. Your job description is not your role. It merely states the tasks that you're supposed to do in a year, whether it's your JD or your KRA or your KPIs. And surely your self-interest is not your role. If you're the kind who thinks your self-interest is your main role, bhai mujhe apna kaam chalana hai, bakiyon ka kya sochna, then I'm afraid you should stop listening to this talk, because you're not going to be a leader ever. If your conduct is transactional, based on self-interest, then leadership is not your cup of tea. So then what is your role? Clearly defining your role and mainly how you contribute to the success of your organization or your family or your housing society or your club or whoever you belong to, that is truly your role. So please stop for a minute and think, whatever company you are in, how do you contribute to its success? Now again, the question may sound a little fuzzy. So let me give you an example, a true example from the army. I commanded an anti-terrorist battalion in J&K, and we used to go out for operations very often. And I was very fortunate that I could go for all the operations where we took part in. Once we went out with one of the companies, and we went out for 2 days in the jungles. After 2 days, we came back, and by the time we got back, it was about 10:30 or 11 at night. So the company commander said, he said, sir, before you go back to the headquarters, which was about 2 hours away, why didn't you have dinner with us? So I said, great. So I told the company commander, I said, fine, before we have dinner, let's, you and I and your officer, let's go down and check what are the Jawans eating today. So we went into the langar. Our cook house is called langar. And the man who runs the cook house is called langar commander. Everybody in the army is a commander, by the way. The langar commander is nothing but a lance naik, the junior most rank in the food chain. So when I went there, I found there was a dal, there was a roti, there was sabzi, there was rice, there was little bit of papad also. So I told the langar commander, I said, beta, we came back after 2 days, the Jawans have walked 2 days. Why didn't you make something better, like chicken? He said, sir, no chicken came in the supply. I said, how about eggs? He said, sir, no eggs came in the supply either. So I said, hang on. So take some money. The company commander will give you money. You take 5 guys with weapons, go to the nearest village, wake up the nambardar, buy all the eggs, come back, quickly make something. Whether you make egg curry, bhujia, I don't care. And the men will eat that. And all the Jawans who were beginning to line up and they were looking at their CO, I looked at them and said, everybody go back to your barrack and everybody will get 2 pegs of rum free of cost from me. And you go back and enjoy a drink and then you come back and have your food. So the matter ended. Next day, I came back to this company for a debriefing. So I called the same langar commander again and I said, Beta, tell me, what is your role? He said, sir, mera role hai khana banana, khana banwana. So I said, whether you make good food, bad food, unhygienic food, is it all right? He said, no, sir. My role is to make good food. So I said, okay, now we are clarifying our role. Now we are moving up from the JD. So I said, all right, but why the hell should you worry about good food? Your pay is not going to increase. Why not just make ordinary food? He said, no, sir, good food is very important, sir, because अगर मैं अच्छा खाना बनाऊंगा तो जवानों का मनोबल ऊंचा होगा. तो I said, बेटा तूने मनोबल ऊंचा करके क्या करना है जवानों का? तेरी तनख्वाह तो नहीं बढ़ेगी. फौज में ना तो कोई बोनस है, ना कोई कुछ होना है साल के लास्ट में, कोई अप्रेजल नहीं है. तो तूने मनोबल से क्या करना है? ये तेरा रोल कैसे हो गया? He said, नहीं sir, he looked surprised. He said, sir, मनोबल ऊंचा होगा जवानों का, तभी तो वो जाएंगे और फिर टेररिस्ट को मारेंगे. I said, that is your role. You are directly contributing to the killing of terrorists. That's your role. Your role is not looking and seeing how many chapatis are being made. When you understand what your contribution really is, you lift your game in life. That is how important your role is. So at the end of this talk, I want you to just ponder over it for a minute. What is your role when it comes to your work, your family? Where are you contributing? Are you the kind of guy when you're my age, I'm 62 now, 63 I'm turning, when you become 62 or 63 and your grandchildren ask you, Dada or Dadi, kya kiya aapne life mein? Are you the kind of guy who's going to say, I used to go to office at 9, I used to come back at 6 o'clock? Would that be your role? Or would you say, when I worked in that company, I introduced a small system, छोटा सा system, उनको आज तक याद है. अभी भी लोग मुझे फोन करते हैं, बोलते हैं आपने जो contribute किया अभी तक चल रहा है. I remember there was a guy who used to, control 3 lifts in the building where I was CEO. So one morning when I met him, he said, "Sir, ये lift का जो control करने का काम है ना सर, ये कोई नहीं कर सकता. ये बड़ा मुश्किल काम है. मैं कई साल से कर रहा हूँ, मैं खींच के रखता हूँ 3 लड़कों को." And I used to see him always cleaning the lift. Here is a guy who understands his role. no matter how menial it is. So please understand what your role is when you want to be. And I'm going to give you a second fascinating story, a true story to which I'm witness of how, at the very lowest levels, intentional leaders understand what their role is. The story is back in 1991. We were fighting the Ulfa terrorists in Assam. I was a staff officer coordinating the operations, and I was in a place called Mangaldoy in Assam, which you can see at the bottom of your screen. We were living in tents. And there was a place called Tangla, which you can see on the top of the screen, about 20-25 kilometers away, where there was one of the battalions. Two Jawans on a motorcycle used to come every day to deliver official mail from Tangla to Mangaldoy. Ulfa terrorists saw it. They saw there is a pattern. They decided to kill these two guys. So what they did a rehearsal. They came on a motorcycle behind this motorcycle, and they found one guy is driving, the other Jawan sitting behind has got a weapon in his lap. So he won't fire. He can't fire if you fire from behind. So the next day they came, and the place where you see I put a little star, they shot these two guys. They kept firing multiple rounds at the Jawans as they went past. So naturally, these two guys were riddled with bullets. They fell, the bike fell. The Jawans tried firing back, but of course they hit nothing. You are under a lot of trauma when you're shot. Now, I came to know of this incident a little later when in Mangaldoy, I saw a truck coming and there were some civilians in it. They came running to me and said, there is a Jawan who's shot, he's in the truck. So I ran there and I got hold of the doctor and I called a few people, and we saw the boy he was conscious. So we did a first aid quickly, and the truck was heading in the direction of the hospital. So I said, and I put some Jawans and I said, rush, just take him. And when I came back to my tent, I suddenly realized there are supposed to be two Jawans. What happened to the second guy? Has he died? And then 10 minutes later, I see this guy, Lance Naik Gopal Tiwari, coming in a village jeep, which has got at least 15 people in it. He's sitting in the center. Okay, he's taken a lift. And he's also shot in multiple places. So we took him out, put him in the tent. The doctor came, we started patching him up. Somebody brought a glass of water. I remember his words. When the guy was trying to give him water, he said, तेरे को पानी की क्या जल्दी है? मैं मरने वाला थोड़ा हूं. पहले साहब को रिपोर्ट देने दे. And then he started describing what color motorcycle, Hero Honda, CD100, red colored, blah, blah, blah. And I said, did you fire? He said, yeah, we fired, sir. We fired all the rounds. We fired 30 rounds. I said, all right. So we evacuated him also. When we went to the site, we searched. We found the rounds fired by the terrorists. But we didn't find a single round fired by the Jawans. So I had two mysteries in my mind. What happened? Why didn't they fire? Why did he tell me a lie? And secondly, why didn't he evacuate himself? Why didn't he come in the truck? So I went to the hospital after a couple of days and they were fortunately recovering. So I spoke to Gopal Tiwari and I said, ऐसे बेटा, तू उसके साथ क्यों नहीं आया? कहता सर दो बातें थी. पहले तो हम जब गोली लगी तो बड़े परेशान हो गए सर, हम नीचे गिरे, थर-थर कांप रहे थे. फिर मैंने इसकी तरफ देखा, लड़के की तरफ, तो मैंने देखा कि ये तो सिपाही है, मैं लांस नायक हूं, कमांडर तो मैं हूं, तो रिपोर्ट तो मेरे को देनी है. इतने में ट्रक आ गया. तो मैंने लड़के को ट्रक में डाला. मैंने कहा पहले इसको भगाओ, मैं रिपोर्ट देकर आऊंगा. और दूसरा सर, वो ऑर्डर है ना फौज में कि अगर फायर करते हो तो जो खाली खोखा है, जो फायर्ड केस है, उसकी गिनती होती है. Now that happens only in peace stations. The poor boy didn't know it doesn't happen in operations. कहता वो एक आधा घूम जाए ना तो सर पलटन का नाम बदनाम होता है फालतू में. मैंने कहा चलो कोई बात नहीं, 5 मिनट की बात है. मैंने वहां बैठ के घास में मैंने सारे राउंड गिने सर, तो 30 मैंने फायर्ड केस गिने. वो मेरे कोट पार का उसकी जेब में है, आप उससे निकाल लेना. What do you think of this story? Here is a Lance Naik about to retire. He knows he's a leader. He's the guy who has the best possible story lined up for his grandchildren. He is the guy who's going to feel fulfilled when he looks back at his life. You know, once I was asked this question in IIM Ahmedabad by a very smart lady. She said, you know, we get the, how is it that the army guys are so different? I said, look, the army guys come from the exact same demographic as rest of the country. Exact same demographic. Same middle class, same education, same financial. When I joined the army, I'd never spoken a sentence of English. I came from a Punjabi medium school, humble background, lived in a one room house. We all come from the same place. All right. So it is wrong to think that Fajis can do it, but in my job, I will not show this kind of leadership, even when my life is not in danger. And that's why I told you this story. All right. Now let me tell you the flip side of what happens when you don't have intentional leadership, when you've just been made leader by chance. No, I'm not talking about Pandit Nehru. God knows he's already under a lot of criticism. I'm not going to add to it. He's a great man. So you know, in 1962, when we realized that the Chinese are sitting on some of our territory, because the Chinese don't recognize the McMahon line based on which we decided there was a border. There's never been a border agreement between India and China. I hope you know that. Not in British days, not till now. So Mr. Nehru was visiting Ceylon, Sri Lanka. And at the airport, somebody asked him, "You believe there are Chinese in our territory. What are you going to do?" And he said, "I've ordered the army to throw them out." Now, the chief of the army staff at that point of time was a guy called General P.N. Thapar, whose son you see on the television, Karan Thapar. See, routinely, the government asked the army, "Are you prepared for war?" And General Thapar would have said, "Of course, sir." Now, when the orders came, General Thapar started speaking to his army commander, General Sen, who started speaking to the corps commander, the photograph of which I have put here because he's a great man, Lieutenant General Umrao Singh, who used to sit in Tejpur. Umrao said, "Are you guys crazy? You don't know the reality? We don't have the weapons, we don't have ammunition, we don't have roads, we don't have tracks. Throw out the Chinese. We'll have a tough time defending ourselves." And what were we to defend? This is the area, more than 20,000 feet. I've served here for 2 years. The river you see down below is called Namkhachu, where the battle was fought. When this war took place, our soldiers were sitting in the river bed and the Chinese were sitting on top of the hill. All right. So Umrao Singh said, "Nothing doing." Now the army got into a bind. They went back to the defense minister, Krishna Menon, and Krishna Menon said, "Nothing doing. We have to do something." So 3 options were discussed. Option 1, let's fire Umrao Singh. Then some wise man said, no, don't do that. If you fire him, Umrao Singh will tell the truth to the world. Then they said, let's replace him. They said, fine. Who's the next senior? You know who was the next senior? A guy called Major General Sam Manekshaw. Look at the destiny of it. Now, Sam Manekshaw was in the bad books of the defense minister because in one of the talks, he had made fun of the defense minister. So Krishna Menon said, "Over my dead body. Sam Manekshaw will never be promoted. So what should we do?" So you know what they did? They said, let's tell Umrao Singh, you are commanding 33 Corps. तुम्हारा तो ये काम ही नहीं है. You face East Pakistan. We will raise a new corps called 4 Corps. So 4 Corps was raised just days before the war. Now the problem was to look for a commander for 4 Corps. So they decided to pick an officer from the ASC. ASC officers don't become corps commanders. In fact, they don't become even brigade commanders. Because he was related to the prime minister. They called him and said, "You're the man of destiny. You go throw out the Chinese." And that man's name was Lieutenant General B.M. Kaul. So this intentional leadership example I'm giving you relates to General Kaul, not to any of the other gentlemen. Now, General Kaul was kicked upstairs. He was not a leader. He had never commanded a battalion, a brigade, a division, a corps. And he decided to go there and he said, "We'll throw the Chinese out." When he landed there, he realized you can't even walk 10 steps there. If you walk 10 steps in this area, you have to sit down to catch a breath. So General Kaul was carried piggyback by a porter all the way down into Namkhachu. When he reached Namkhachu, he realized, my God, we can't beat the Chinese here. We can't defeat. So he started telling his commander, he said, I think we made a mistake. I think I got to go back. I can't stay here. I got to go back and tell the government that we can't attack. We can't do this. So everyone said, yes, sir. You should not be sitting here. You go back. So Mr. Kaul went back. What would an intentional leader have done? What would Sam Manekshaw have done? Sam Manekshaw would have gone to the government and like Umarao Singh, he would have said, we cannot attack. Don't be foolish. Don't get the army killed. Don't get disgraced. We are not equipped. But Kaul was not an intentional leader. So when he reached Delhi, he made a presentation to the Prime Minister and the cabinet, and he falsely said, there are 3 options. There were no 3 options. He said, first option is, we can attack the Chinese, but that's a little problematic. Second is, where we are sitting in the riverbed, we sit there and defend. And third is, we withdraw to the heights and defend ourselves. The third option was the only tactically sound option, which is what we are practicing today. But since he gave 3 options to politicians, and politicians obviously didn't understand tactics or strategy, they said, no, we will not withdraw. We will fight. We shall defend the last inch of the ground. So let the army stay in Namkhachu. That is where we got massacred. That is how we came to lose the 1962 war. That is the difference between being an accidental leader and somebody who understands what leadership is. Now that great man down below, Sam Manekshaw. Let me tell you about him and what is intentional leadership. I've had the pleasure of meeting him many times. Somebody's raised a hand, somebody called Dinanjan Swen. You can write whatever you want to write in a chat. So Sam Manekshaw, he used to give us a talk in Staff College, which was classified talk about what we did in 71 war, how we prepared. But there are elements of that talk that I can share with you. Some are public knowledge. In the month of March, Sam Manekshaw was ordered by the then Defense Minister Babu Jagjeevan Ram. He was told that Mrs. Gandhi wants you to attack East Pakistan because there is a lot of trouble with the refugees and you want to capture them. Sam flatly refused. He used to tell the story in a very amusing way. He used to say, I didn't like the defense minister for 2 reasons. 1, he was corrupt. And 2, he couldn't pronounce my name. I am Sam Manekshaw. He used to call me Sham. So he said, he called me to his office and said, Sham, maan bhi jao. And then I refused. He took me to Mrs. Gandhi. So Mrs. Gandhi said, why are you being difficult? And I said, I'm not being difficult. If you want us to lose the war, have to be disgraced, let's attack now. But we are about to come into the rainy season. We'll be waterlogged in Bangladesh, in East Pakistan. We don't have enough tanks. We are not prepared yet. If you want a definite defeat, we'll do it now. You want a certain victory, I'll do it in December. That is intentional leadership. That is the clarity that you will speak the truth boldly, even if you think it is not good. Before I tell you about this guy, Yahya Khan, I also must tell you that before the war, Sam Manekshaw was ordered to take an expedition to USSR to buy some tanks. So one of the gentlemen going in his expedition was a guy called General Jacob, who was the Eastern Army commander, a very good man. But the bureaucrats in India said, Jacob will not go. Why? He's a Jew. The Soviets may not like it. Sam said, either Jacob goes or nobody goes. He was summoned again by Mrs. Gandhi. And Mrs. Gandhi said, why are you being difficult? And he said, Madam, when the Soviets come here, do they send us a list of their delegation? Are we not a great civilization? So Jacob is the expert. He goes or nobody goes. So Jacob went. Now, other than the intentional leadership, I want to tell you a little funny incident from Sam's talk. I mean, I can talk about it all night, but let me tell you one. You know, when Sam, before partition, Sam Manekshaw was a lieutenant colonel. And serving under him was a guy called Major Yahya Khan, who became Pakistan's president. So when partition took place, Yahya came to Sam and said, "Sir, you have a very swanky motorcycle. How much did you pay for it?" He said, $1,000. He said, "Sir, you also put a little nice, extension behind where your wife sits. How much did you pay for that?" He said, "Another 100. He said, "Sir, please give me this bike, sir, because in Pakistan we'll get nothing." So Sam said, "It's 1100 rupees." He said, "Sir, I don't have any money right now, but when I go to Pakistan, I'll send you the money." So Sam used to tell us in the story, he said he took the bike and the blighter never paid the money. He said, "But in the end, I did the right bargain. For that 1100 bucks, I took away half his country." Okay, so now being an intentional leader is not quite thing as having good intentions. The road to hell, as you know, is paved with good intentions. It is deciding in the mind, are you just an office goer or are you a leader? Are you just a tax consultant? Of course you're a tax consultant. And I hope you're a brilliant tax consultant. But is that all you are? When you have 3 or 4 people under you, or 10 people under you, or 40 people under you? If you continue to think with that mindset that you're only an office goer, then I'm afraid you will behave in a certain way, which may not be the leader. As you've risen in life, have you become a leader by internal resolve, or are you just getting kicked upstairs? Right? And you can reach the highest level in this country without ever having an internal resolve. Again, I'm not going to make a political statement, but Sanjay Baru wrote a book called The Accidental Prime Minister. Do you only focus on people, or do you focus on personal success? Everybody wants personal success. Everybody has a self-interest. But let me tell you, and I'm not giving you some sweet jalebi to eat. If you want to be a leader, if you have the intention to be a leader, you've really got to focus on people. People is what you command. Look at that last night, Gopal Tiwari. After getting shot, he's still focusing on people. That's what it is. Do you continue to micromanage? Or do you start thinking of the future? At some stage, you must learn to let go, to delegate, to trust, to coordinate, to stand back, to supervise, and occasionally put a finger in. Do you do big picture thinking? Or are you always counting small change? It is good to count small change when you are at the junior most levels. God lives in details. It's a great idea to be mindful of details. But as you rise, you got to have the big picture. You heard in the beginning, you heard your leader talk, Mr. Anish talk. He didn't make any small talk. He's talking about COVID in the global level and what the issues are. You've got to start thinking big, because if you are mired in only small thinking about only yourself, then chances are you will never get the big picture right. Just imagine somebody is a leader who doesn't understand that the supply chain with China is about to break. He doesn't have the big picture. What do you think is going to happen to his company? Right? So, big picture. So I'm going to give you a big picture at the highest level. The man you're looking at is the greatest man in my book. But for 27 years, he was locked up in a small prison in Robben Island. That's a true picture. When I went to Robben Island in South Africa, where I was posted for some time, and I had a look at this prison, I was shocked. Even a man of my height probably couldn't sleep there properly. Nelson Mandela was a terrorist. He was called a terrorist. So he was an ordinary guy. He was not a great leader, not a great scholar, not an intellectual, not a party man. And he was in this prison for 27 years without a charge sheet. In fact, when he went to prison, one of his daughters was about to be born. He, for the first time, saw the daughter when the daughter already had a daughter. They allowed him to write 1 or 2 letters in a year, all his life, and he did hard labor. But what is it to be an intentional leader? When he stepped out of the jail, one of the first things he said is, if South Africa has to get ahead, we have to forgive. We just cannot wallow in the past. Think of what we do in our country and just imagine. This man became, in 4 years, he became the president of South Africa. He said, not one white will ever be damaged when I'm the president. And people had to listen because he had suffered 27 years. And he was a man who was saying, he said, if I carry on carrying grudges, I will still be a prisoner in the Robben Island in my mind. There were times when he was opposed. There was times when he was booed. Once he was booed by a crowd when he said, nothing will happen to the whites. And whites are only 10% in South Africa. And he said, when he said this, when people booed, he said, are there any adults in this crowd? If you don't like what I'm saying, get yourself another president. In 1985, he ensured that the World Cup rugby was hosted in South Africa. It's not a small thing. Rugby is a whites game. The blacks used to hate it. They hated the game. But he as a leader knew that to unite the country, there had to be a win. So he requested, got the World Cup rugby there. The blacks didn't like it whatsoever. The president started calling the captain of the rugby team, Francois Depinard, to his office, started telling him, you got to win. A couple of times he landed in his helicopter right in the middle of the practice, much to the shock of the rugby players, all of them who were white. And then gradually South Africa started winning in the tournament, surprised everybody and reached the finals. And in the finals, they were going to play New Zealand, which was a very strong team. You know what Mandela did? He landed up for the tournament, for the final, wearing South Africa's rugby uniform of the captain. The picture you see is the real one. It has also been reproduced in a movie called Invictus. The crowd was stunned. He was defying 90% of his population because that is what leaders do. If all that a leader is going to do is follow the crowd, then why do you need a leader? Then you need votes, you need a computer. Leaders are supposed to shape people's minds, not play to the gallery. And South Africa won. If you read history, and I've seen this with my eyes, that one game united South Africa. Black taxi drivers in Johannesburg did not charge taxi fare for 3 days. And that is not enough. And that is not all. Now, many crimes had been committed over 50, 60 years. Okay, many blacks had been just killed, buried, nobody knew where they were, unspeakable crimes. So what Mandela did is he set up a thing called Truth and Reconciliation Commission, along with Bishop Desmond Tutu. And he said, any white who has done anything wrong, come up to the commission, confess in front of that black family, and you're forgiven. Can you imagine a thing like that? We forget nothing, we forgive nothing. There has not been a single riot in South Africa between blacks and whites. And South Africa is considered a superpower in Africa. This is the power of ex-terrorists. And when you listen to Mandela, you can go to YouTube and listen to his talks, speech. You will see that he's a politician. He's not just he's not some great thinker, but he's a leader. I would encourage you to Google what he said in the presence of Bill Clinton. When Bill Clinton was facing a problem with Monica Lewinsky, Mandela was visiting America. He made a speech of 20 minutes in which he devoted 15 minutes supporting Bill Clinton. And he said, you know why I'm saying so? Why am I doing it? Because my morality does not permit me to forego my friends. Even though he knew half the America will curse him. This is the kind of, so you know what I'm saying is, ladies and gentlemen, if this is what ordinary people can do at this level, what stops us from doing at least small things in our own lives? So leaders, and these leaders like Mandela, understand the goals. They understand the goal of South Africa was to win, to become a great country, to unite, which should also be the goal of our country, to be united. What does it mean at your level? What does it mean at my level? Let me take some simple examples. How are the meetings conducted will tell you how intentional you are, how goal-oriented you are. Are the meetings meandering? Are things going all over the place? Are the agendas not clear? Is the outcome not clear? Are we just calling people who are not even involved? Are we letting people speak who have nothing to say, but they will always say something? That's an example of goal orientation. Similarly, are you focusing only on quick wins or are you focusing on process? Let me give you a little tip. If you're a leader, whatever is good in the long term is what you should do. Look at the case of PwC in Satyam's case. PwC is a great company. But what happened during Satyam's case? 9 years of audit. Quick wins. Every year renewing your contract and not even spotting the fact that 10,000 employees are fictitious on the rolls of Satyam and then attracting a 3-year ban on itself. That's the difference between companies like Tata who focus on process and not just quick wins. Wins are important. Cash flow is important, but sustainability is more important. So they take a holistic view of the revenue generation. You don't get money by just doing sales and BD. There is much more involved, and leaders understand that. The morale, the quality of your employees, the motivation of your employees, the hygiene in which you sit in the office, the processes, everything is important. So I'm going to give you a personal example, not a great example, ordinary example. I became CEO of a rural education society, and we used to run 92 schools and colleges, 42,000 children. So when I reached there with no experience, I was told, look, I want you to generate revenue. That is going to be your focus. So I looked at all the budgets and I found that in educational institutes, 90% of the budget comes from where? It comes from admissions. So therefore, if you're a short-sighted person, you will say, let me forget everything else. Let me focus on admissions. Let's do marketing. Okay? Of course you will do marketing. But then I realized you don't get admissions unless you get placements. So when you decide your goal, you got to work backwards. No parent sends anybody to a college when they find that placements are zero. No parent says, मेरे बच्चे को college में admission दे दो, नहीं मिलेगा, बाद में job नहीं मिलेगा तो कोई बात नहीं. Doesn't happen really, isn't it? So I said placements is the key. But how do placements come in? They come in with results and they come in with the reputation of the college. Isn't that a no-brainer? But then the question comes, where do the results come from? The results can't come unless the standards of faculty are good. The results can't come unless the college engages in research and industry interaction and publishing the kind of journals that Mr. Anish was talking about. Unless you spread the word, unless people cite your work. And of course it will not come unless the quality of your intake is good. And for all this, what is needed again? You can't have faculty standards without faculty standards. You can't have research and industry interaction without good faculty. And you can't attract intake without faculty standards. So I went back to my chairman and said, I want to improve the faculty standard. It's going to cost us a bit, but that's what we should focus on. That is how you set your goal. It's not a great example. It's an ordinary example, but I'm just giving you an example. A much better example is the CEO of Starbucks, Howard Schultz. When he took over, he realized Starbucks talks about great service, but the service is not great. So you know what he did? For first 3 months, he shut all the Starbucks stores. They lost millions of dollars. He was very severely criticized. They said, you fool, Costa Coffee will overtake you. Other coffees will overtake you. But he said, no, I know what I'm doing. If we talk about service, we are going to get good service. So I'm going to train them. And Starbucks got back to number one. All right. Now we're coming almost to the end of this. The point is, if you want to be an intentional leader, you have to start getting ready now. What should you be doing now? What should you be focusing on now so that you become an intentionally good leader? There are a million things that leaders do. There are a million attributes. You pick up any book on leadership, you'll see there's a laundry list of things a leader is supposed to be. Okay, maybe all of them are right. I don't know. But I'm going to give you what is nothing from a book, what is my well-considered opinion, having been something of a leader for 4 decades in the army and then 5 years in the corporate sector. The first thing is what we already talked about. Please ponder over it starting today. What is my role? If I'm a parent, what is really my role? In my company, what am I contributing? You know, a very wise man said, should everybody in the company know how the company is doing and what is everyone doing? No, not necessary. Not everybody has a bandwidth of understanding strategy, what's going through the mind of the partner or the senior consultant or the MD. No, not required. Sure, people should know enough. That is not required. But what everybody should know is, how is he contributing to the success? So when the Langar commander knows how is he contributing to the success, I assure you, next time he's going to make good food. Think about that in your own life, because you want to be an intentional leader. The second thing, please ensure that people under you feel protected and safe, especially in these days of disruption. Do you feel safe under your leader? Are you the sort of leader under whom people feel safe? They say, कुछ भी हो, थोड़ा ये protection देगा हमें, ये बचा लेगा. गलती होगी, he will take responsibility. He will own up. He will not let me get hurt. As a matter of fact, personally, I had a bigger rule. I always worked up for this, making your people feel protected and safe. And I can tell you a million stories again, but we won't have the time. But I also ask myself this question: am I fun to be with? Am I fun to be with? We all yearn for company. We all yearn for friends. We all yearn for followers. But are we the kind of people like to be with? That's our responsibility. We were sitting in Durban, in South Africa, watching a water world show, and there were dolphins jumping in and out of water through the hoops and, kissing the trainer and balancing the ball. And I asked my wife a question. I said, do you know why dolphins are so lovable? Why are they loved so much by everybody? She said, no. I said, after all, there are other beautiful fish in the sea, even sharks and whales, and every other fish is very graceful. Why are dolphins loved? The reason why they're loved is because they make an effort to be lovable. It's not automatic. So you want to be followed, you want to be an intentional leader. Do people feel safe? Have the courage to protect people. The parallel frivolous example is, you're a dad and you're sleeping in your bed and there's a little rustling noise outside and your child gets scared and says, "Bahar koi hai," and you say, "Chupchap so ja," and you also show fear. You know what is going to happen in the long run? Rather than a father who gets up and says, "Kuch nahi hai, main dekhta hu." He opens the door and looks around and says, "Kuch nahi tha," and closes the door. Let people feel safe. Be decisive. There is no leadership without taking calls. Why don't we take calls? The reason is simple. We are scared that we will be laughed at, that things will go wrong. Nobody hangs you for taking a bad call. It never happens. We take counsel of our fears and we say, and you know what happens below us? People are confused. They're not going to come and tell you, sir, you are very confused, sir. They're not going to tell you that. They will say, ठीक है sir, कोई बात नहीं, आज decide नहीं किया, कल परसों तक कर लेंगे. No, be decisive. I've never seen a person being hanged for being decisive. And be clear. There is a difference between a leader who says, ये मैं तेरे को काम दे रहा हूँ, ऐसा करना है, इसको इस हफ्ते में ना 3-4 दिन में करके ले आना. Then a leader who says, I'm giving you this work, I'd like to meet you at 10 o'clock on Thursday in my office. And if you can't do it, give me a call on Tuesday in the morning by 10 o'clock and tell me you can't do it. There's a world of difference between these two leaders. Be clear, be specific. Look around you. Anybody you find who's not specific is just floundering. The best people are specific. And take responsibility. Kuch nahi hota. Again, I don't have the time. I could tell you stories from the army where people have taken big responsibility. Nothing ever happened. People became generals. Okay? And it's not just in the army. Fourth, everybody has a self-interest. You have a self-interest. I have a self-interest. But we are remarkable human beings. When it comes to other people's self-interest, we start putting organizational interest. Self-interest is not money. That is one interest. Money is important. But self-interest sometimes is that people want recognition. They want a pat on the back. They want to be applauded. They want to be recognized. They want a little approval. God knows there are people who just want love. There are people for whom their identity is work. So they come every morning half an hour ahead because they want to work. Don't confuse it that their self-interest is money. And this is one of the biggest, blind spot corporate sector has. People think, oh, it's going to be appraisal and money and that's what's going to attract. Baki mein jo bolu wo fazul hai. No, I'm sorry, it's not. It's not. Everybody wants money, but people want appreciation. Share the appreciation. Do it publicly. I used to tell my MD, I said, how much power you have? Exercise it. Walk through the office. Pick out one guy, tap his shoulder lightly and say, मैंने सुना है तू बड़ी मेहनत कर रहा है आजकल. And walk away. And watch his performance. Do you know what appreciation does? When you hurt a man or a lady or some employee whom you lead, what happens to him when he goes home? He's depressed. He's throwing a tantrum there. That is the power of leaders. What you do in the office, at your workplace, is going to spread. And that is what is going to make you remember, because the guy is going to go home and say, I work under Mr. Anish, I work under Preeti, I work under Premal, and my God, यार मजा आ जाता है काम करने में. डंडा लगाते हैं, मजा आ जाता है. तारीफ भी करते हैं. Is that very hard? But finally, if there was just one thing you had to pick up today, it should be what? It should be leading by example. Some of you heard the story before. I'm going to tell you this true story. On the 4th of June, 1997, when I was commanding this anti-terrorist battalion, I was going in my vehicle with 3-4 people. We drove over a road. We didn't know that under the road there is a huge amount of explosive called improvised explosive device, connected with a wire and an antenna. And then terrorists are sitting on a hill feature 200 meters away. They press a radio set and you're blown. So by some chance, I wasn't blown. Maybe they were not there at that time. Maybe the damn thing didn't work. I don't know what happened. But the vehicle coming behind me, which was about 10 minutes behind me, got blown. The vehicle went up more than the height of the eucalyptus trees. That's the vehicle that you're seeing in the picture. The crater was 8 feet deep. That crater picture is not a real picture. That's a US Army picture. The vehicle took 2 turns in the air, smashed against the road, instantly killed 1 major and 2 jawans. And 1 young lieutenant and 2 jawans were trapped in the steel. And militants started firing from the hill and started coming down to kill everybody so that they could take away the weapons. So this young lieutenant, Loganathan, who was paralyzed a little bit, started firing back. So that, there was a firefight, but luckily there was no more damage. When we heard the blast, actually everybody in the area heard the blast, we turned around and then somebody said, sir, there may be more mines, don't take the vehicle, go back, go running. So all of us started running towards the firing. We were all carrying AK-47s. Now, those of you who know senior army officers, colonels and above, you know that they wear in the uniform, on the collar, they wear a red colored thing. It's called a red tab. They're only for colonels and above. Okay. We jokingly call it lipstick on the collar. Now, this is to be worn only in peace stations, not during war. Because if you wear it in war, the enemy knows who's the commander. Then you'll be knocked out first. I used to wear it. So the officer who was running with me said, sir, I think you should take these off. There is firing happening and you should not be wearing it anyway. It's not as per the rules. And somebody is going to kill you and then there'll be bigger tamasha. So I said, okay, I will take it off. But we were too caught up. And in the meanwhile, I heard, I heard the news that 1 officer and 2 jawans had died. We were still running towards the firing. And there was a barber running next to me by the name of Roop Lal, Fauji barber. He tapped me and said, sir, मैं एक बात कहूँ? So I said, हाँ. He said, sir, वो जो बात आपको मेजर साहब ने कही ना, वो बड़ी पते की बात है सर. इसमें कोई बहादुरी नहीं है, ये जो लाल लाल लगा के आप घूमते हो. कोई आपको मार देगा, अभी फिर भगदड़ मच जाएगी. I remember his words. He said, भगदड़ मच जाएगी. तो इसमें क्या बहादुरी है सर? आपको इसको निकालना चाहिए. तो I said, हाँ रूपलाल, मैं निकालूंगा. He said, नहीं सर, वो नहीं कह रहा मैं. आपको निकालना चाहिए, पर सर इसको आज नहीं निकालना. सर इसको 3 महीने नहीं निकालना. आप तो लीडर हो सर. जवानों को ये कभी नहीं लगना चाहिए कि 2-3 लोग मरते हैं और हमारा सीओ साहब घबरा जाता है. सर आपने तो एग्जाम्पल देना है ना. Can you think of a better example of leading by example? This is what a barber understands. I did not take those red tabs off for 3.5 years in his honor. So doesn't matter how difficult is the situation, doesn't matter how hard you're working in the office, doesn't matter whether you've been not sleeping for the last 2 days, you still got to lead by example. What does it mean in your office? And this is pretty much the last thing I'm going to show you. What does it mean in your company? The first thing it means is you've got to be more competent than the people you lead. Don't kid yourself. Everybody who's senior is always saluted. Everybody says Jai Hind. Everybody says Namaskar. Everybody says Neeraj Bali sir, kaise ho aap? But that doesn't mean they're respecting you. The only way you can get respect is if you're more competent than everybody you command. You go to an infantry battalion, you see a 2-mile run or a 5-kilometer run. You will see in the first 20 people, there will be at least 10 officers. 10 officers out of 1,000 Jawans. You got to lead by example. You got to be more competent. You got to work harder. There is no getting away. A lot of people think as you rise in life and you become bigger leader, तुम्हारा काम कम हो जाएगा. If that was the case, Mr. Modi should be working for 1 hour a day, isn't it? No. You got to work harder than the team. I used to tell, when Jawans used to come to my battalion, I used to tell them, here are a couple of promises I'm going to make to you. First of all, you will see I will work harder, walk more, take part in more operations than you do, risk my life more than you do. And secondly, I will make sure when you go back from the battalion, you will say, that was the best experience of my life. It will only happen when you work harder. Anybody who tells you otherwise is not a friend. Third, be visible. Don't lock yourself behind a cubicle, especially when there is work. When there is work, be present there. If you're a college professor and there is the 26th January celebration happening and everybody is working and decorating the hall, go there and stand there. It reassures your team. It tells people you are with them. What did people do in wars? People came on an elephant. Why? Elephant is not a very practical way to fight, in a war, because they wanted to be visible. That is what you should do. Which brings me to the end of this talk on intentional leadership. Thank you very much for being a good audience. If you have any questions, I'll be very happy to take them on. Thank you. And I'll stop sharing the screen.
So we have two questions with us.
Yeah, let me see the screen.
So, one question is, how would you compare the leadership style of our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, and Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru? It leaders are born and not made. So your views on the same?
So somebody who's asked this question obviously is willing to stay here all night. You're presuming that I'm an expert on all facets of history. No, I'm not. I don't think I'm going to comment on any political leader, especially the present ones. That is for you to judge. But if you talk about intentional leadership, I'm not talking about quality, good, bad, ugly, because that's not my job. I am too small a person to be commenting on a sitting prime minister. I can talk about historical figures, all right. But if you talk about intentional leadership, Mr. Modi is a great example. He knew he's a leader. He is not there by accident. Whatever he does is in a focused way. All right. So that's my answer. I've already talked about Nelson Mandela. So I suggest that don't put me in a spot in comparing everybody with everybody. This should be enough. Yeah.
The next question is how to find one's own path of life and success when we are not blessed with a good leader but still had to follow him with the given circumstances.
To be a great leader, the first thing you have to do is to learn to be a great follower. Okay, that's the first step. A lot of people crib about their commanders, their leaders, because they really are misguided. I'll tell you why they're misguided. Till the time you reach that level, how do you know what the pain is of that level? I've heard a lot of people say, जब मैं वहां पहुंचूंगा ना, तब देखना क्या होगा. कुछ नहीं होता. Same thing happens again and again. Doesn't every child criticize his parents? And yet you become a parent and you realize what the pain was, what the difficulty is, that you're supposed to discipline your child. So first of all, stop passing judgments on your leaders. Focus on yourself. How should you find your way? How should you find your way? I'll give you the answer. There's a guy who wrote this book called A Man's Search for Meaning. He was in a Nazi concentration camp and suffered the worst torture. I don't know how he survived, if you read the book. And when he came out, he came to a conclusion. He said, I was looking for the meaning of my life. That was a nonsense question. Life will not tell you what the meaning is. You have to give meaning to whatever life has been given to you. Whatever you are doing, please bring meaning to that life first. Don't say, यार मैं कहाँ फंस गया. अगर मैं फौज में होता ना तो देखना मैं क्या होता. Or people like me to say, यार मैं अगर होता ना chartered accountant, फिर देखना मैं कितना अमीर हो जाता. No, first you tell me how good you are. When we are questioned by the Almighty, those of you who believe in Almighty, the question Almighty will ask me is not, Neeraj Bali, why were you not a good Tanvi Vora? Why were you not good Nishta? The question I'll be asked me, were you a good Neeraj Bali? So bring meaning to the life you are doing. Whatever job you're doing, please bring meaning to that. Because that's the most valuable thing you're doing right now. You can change your job, you can move on, you can upskill yourself. I'm not saying all that. But right now, This is what you should be doing.
The next question is that Kashmir issue is lack of vision on our few leaders at the time of independence?
We are all guilty. There's no question of only independence or only now or only then. We should have been able to sort it out. It's a very larger question. Again, I don't want to get into the politics of it. Sure, we made mistakes during the independence time. Sure, we slept when Pakistanis took half the Kashmir. But thereafter, we made many, many mistakes. And the situation hasn't improved a great deal. Situation was a little better, in fact, in some 2008 to 2011. And unfortunately, we are where we are. So I don't think it'll be in fitness of things for me to pass a judgment on that. So sorry, I'm not dodging the question. I just don't want to criticize policymakers. Yeah.
What do you do when you lose your mentor or leader? Do you wait for others in organization or assume charge yourself?
You should assume you charge yourself. Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, one of the reasons why the army is so strong is if you're going for a patrol and the patrol is led by a CO who's a colonel and there is no officer under him and there is a next is a Havaldar and the CO gets shot, the Havaldar will straight away take charge. That is why we are so strong. If we are 1,000 strong battalion, you have to kill all 1,000 of us to win. Okay, there is no succession plan. Never ever wait for orders. If you're a leader, don't wait for orders. If your leader is not present and you have to take a decision, take a decision.
So there's another question. Why is it that Fauji's are excellent people managers?
Fauji's are, no, there are a lot of good people outside. There are a lot of excellent managers outside. I've seen it at every level. See, the army has got one great thing going for it, which everybody should fix in their companies. It's called the culture. We have a culture. And when you have a culture of just following some things, then you don't have to think every day, ye karun ke wo karun, aisa karun ke waisa karun. Okay, we are very clear. We are not dying for some great patriotic idea. Okay, a lot of people tell me, you guys must be very patriotic. I never heard that word in the army, patriotism. Not once. People die because it's a culture never to let down your battalion. Never. Never to let down a compatriot. If somebody is shot, you don't leave him in the fire. So it's a culture. But that's a larger question, how to fix the culture.
So why are we lagging behind as a nation when we are probably the most intelligent and hardworking people in the world?
We probably are not the most intelligent and hardworking because there's no such poll. I keep hearing this. This is a lot of people write on WhatsApp, things like our national anthem has won the #1 national. There is no competition like that. Okay, we are great people. We go out and do great things in America. We do great things in other countries, right? Look, again, it's a larger question. The first thing we must unite as a country. In India, I am a Punjabi. Somebody is a Maharashtrian. Somebody is this, somebody is that. I'm a Hindu, you are that. And every Chinese is a Chinese. How are you going to beat the Chinese? The Chinese are all Chinese. That's all they are. Okay. So this issue of emotionally getting aligned to ethnicity, religion, this, that, blah, is tearing us up. A is that. Two is, let's stop talking about what the government has to do. We are the government. Let's start doing things in our own lives. Too many times, we just keep thinking, who's going to do it? Mr. Modi can only do that much. So we should take responsibility of fixing things in our life. When things like Hathras happens, who's doing it? Is the mindset of the ordinary people, which is doing it. So to become a great country, let's fix our unity. Let's genuinely become hardworking. Let's make our words count. We Indians have a habit of just speaking words which really have no meaning. We say big things. We are a glorious country with a glorious past. We have served under everybody, from Mughals to Portuguese to French to English to everybody. But we talk about a glorious past. Okay, so let's not kid ourselves. Let's be authentic. Let's take our great qualities, move forward, but let's make our words mean something. Let's promise what we can deliver. Yeah.
What's the one thing that's about being a leader?
The one thing about being leader is to lead by example. There is nothing bigger than that. Nothing more, nothing less. You know, children up to a certain age follow their parents, and then they follow not what the parents are saying. They follow what the parents are doing.
How to think clear in crisis situation?
The first thing to remember is our fears are our worst liars. Every army guy knows it. What you are fearing is not going to come true. And yet we lie down in our bed at night and start wondering, क्या होगा future में, कल क्या होगा, परसों क्या होगा. As a child, you wonder, मेरे को मेरी सहेली market में क्यों नहीं लेके गई? Why did she go with 3 other people? We are forever worrying about silly things. Our fears never come true. The second thing that you got to ask yourself is this worry useful? There are useful worries. If you're a student and you're worrying about your exam, it's a very useful worry. Tomorrow morning, you'll get up at 5:30 and start studying. But if you're lying in the bed and worrying about something about which you can do nothing, open the window and throw it out. Okay? So learn from the 4Gs. You only die once. Till that time, lead your life.
In context of intentional leadership, how delegation should be looked at? Delegation as a concept is according to rank or hierarchy, but how can effective time of follow-up be reduced? What strategy as leader one should follow while delegating?
I don't think there's a overarching single answer to this large question. What I will say is this: delegation comes with trust, and delegation comes first with clarity of order. The orders are not clear, or we don't want to really delegate, let go, or we haven't trained the guy. We haven't trained the person. We're just delegating work. So do these 3 things: train your team, have trust, give clear orders. Things will work out.
Yes, sir. That's the end of the question. Anish, sir, any questions from your side?
So just one question from my side, and I think you really hit it on the nail, hit it on the head, the nail on the head when you said leadership is all about leading by example. The question really is that what sort of an example, would you want to set for, organizations like us? How can organizations like us who are educational institutions, non-profit institutions, help in, inculcating a leadership sort of a culture in amongst, professionals or our constituents?
What exactly is the organization? If you can just describe it to me.
So the question is very simple, that
No, what is the
from an
organization?
organizational point of view,
Yeah.
we represent organizations, we represent professionals. How do we get our members to be intentional leaders?
Yeah. So, like I said, if you want to give one takeaway and ensure that your people do it, make sure that the people you've appointed in certain positions as leaders are always leading by example. I'm just repeating this thing again and again. Leading by example. They are the people who are showing more competence. They are the people who are working harder. They are people who are not poodle faking by just coming and giving instructions or giving feedback, but they are the ones who are really, really involved. And you can build that culture by making sure that your reward system and your punishment system is aligned with this. You got to prop up the guys who do this. In the army, routinely what the CEO does is, when he's talking to the whole battalion, he will suddenly make somebody get up who might be a cobbler in the army. And he will say, come here. And he'll make him stand on the stage, put an arm around him and say, ये लड़का जो है ना, जो ये काम कर रहा है, ऐसा काम कोई नहीं करता. So unless you have a culture, people work for a reason. People work for a self-interest. So unless you build up that and punish people who don't do it, this system will never get cleared. It will never get sorted out. So whatever culture you want to bring, align it with your rewards, punishments, SOPs, procedures, traditions, what you speak from the stage, what symbolism you have, all of it.